Okay, guys. So the other day we had a cast about making profit agree with principle and making sure your revenue model actually matches up with your culture so that your company actually succeeds. Well, it turns out that this actually applies to nonprofits and stuff like that too. And sort of our patient zero here, our ripped from the headlines example for all you red meat lovers out there is Firefox and Mozilla, right? So we have a nice new article today. Firefox usage down 85%, despite Mozilla's exec pay going up 400%. Gee, I wonder if somebody's playing house there. You think that's likely?
Oh no, there's no way that could be possible.
Yeah.
There's no way that ego investments and the agency problem could possibly be present in nonprofit corporations.
Yeah, especially when you think about the last big story about Mozilla that got any media traction was that they needed to fire the pioneering creator of JavaScript because he was a wrong thinker. You know, those are the sort of things that we've sort of been dancing around with our casts for a while, is that ideological and not even ideological, but ego investments and diversity of those in your company can be quite healthy for you because you need to have people with different perspectives if you're going to actually be able to appeal to the wide audience that you need to, because not everybody is going to agree with you and your engineers. Okay, you're going to have some kind of majority opinion, and that's fine, but that does not necessarily mean all your customers are going to be of the same brainwave as you. Yes, well, you want to be of the same brainwave as most of your customers, but you also want to maximize profit, which means you need to be accepting that some of your customers are going to be dirtbags.
Well, and not only that, that technical ability and ability to deliver a good product for your customers is not linked to that employee's ideology. It is not.
Not in the slightest.
Both Brendan Ike and Jamie
Zawinski
worked for Mozilla. Now, these two people
couldn't be any further
ideologically from each other. But both of them made great contributions.
Yeah.
And they're things that stand on their own.
Yeah.
So, you know, to hate on one or the other because, say, Jamie is a liberal, you know, that sort of thing. Or Brendan is a conservative, something like that. That's stupid. And even some of the real firebrands in the open source community,
and like there are plenty,
you know, good examples, ESR and the recently canceled founder of the GNU Software Foundation,
Richard Stallman.
They couldn't have more diverse views that you could imagine, right? But they both got canceled by the hate mob.
Yeah, and it's essentially because they're both highly productive and highly opinionated people. And really, when you start to look at sort of what's the pattern here, you start to realize that it's not really that it's about the ideology, it's about the productivity, because it's always the most influential people that end up getting attacked here. And the people who are doing the attacking would justify why they're doing it as in, oh, well, these people are role models because they're so influential in the community. They need to have these upstanding sort of attitudes. And I would reply to that, well,
what historical precedent do you have for this?
No.
Like, one of the greatest men in history was Harold Hardrada, and he was a murderous SOB.
Or say Genghis Khan, or any of the great men through history. You couldn't even remotely argue these people were exemplars of morality.
Yeah.
Highly productive people are not necessarily going to be your most moral and agreeable people.
Or even if you want to go to an example that is socially acceptable today, Alan Turing.
Yeah.
Socially acceptable today. At his time, highly socially unacceptable.
Yeah, total
pariah. He got canceled by the British government, effectively, and eventually committed suicide.
Yeah, essentially killed because of his canceling. And that should give pause to a lot of the people here who are deciding that we need to end people's career because we disagree with them. Certainly posterity is not going to look with you kindly on doing these sorts of things, as posterity does not look kindly on the British government and the attitudes of the time canceling a genius like Alan Turing, right?
Right. And that kind of goes back to what we're talking about here, where Okay, so you've done this. Who are you replacing these people with, huh?
Yeah, you're replacing them with essentially going to be complainers who don't have any real skill.
Well, or people that they fit in, they don't cause trouble, they don't make waves,
They're mediocre.
but they're mediocre. They don't cause the type of things to happen that you want them to have, or in the case of what looks like Mozilla, they're probably actually corrupt. Because when you see that sort of executive pay going up 400%, yet them going completely off mission.
Yeah, and Jamie talked a lot about what really Mozilla did not have to do anything particularly hard here. Really, all they had to do was make the reference browser, which for years they did. And then they had to not be complete losers with regard to the standards. And like you said, being a jugular snapping attack dog on standards committees, making sure that these large corporations weren't essentially just embracing, extending, and extinguishing.
Which is precisely what you're seeing right now with Chromium.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm the maintainer of the Perl Selenium module. And oh my God, the behavior of the Chrome driver and browser towards Selenium is like complete abuse, okay? The standard has changed several times merely because of Chrome driver maintainer intransigence. They just don't care, okay? Yeah. That's what you can expect in an environment where you have one browser that has total dominance and no real advocacy for open source that's of any real power left anymore. Really, and the sad thing is, the Mozilla driver actually worked, and it worked to the standards. You look at MDN, was the best resource online for how to do things in web browsers.
And still is.
For JS, for CSS, for HTML. And that's the thing they cut. They cut MDN. They didn't cut the browser.
They didn't cut out the bullshit that they've been doing the last so many years, buying Pocket, making some dumbass VPN investment, doing all these sorts of things, which are indeed mentioned in the article in question.
Yeah, they essentially chased a bunch of nonsense. A federated identity system, file transfer, a password. Who cares? They didn't have to do any of that.
Well, and every single thing that they invested in there, somebody else already did better, and according to the Unix philosophy, which every open source head out there is already a proponent of, do one thing and do it well. That's like your two-step strategy for success.
Well, and most importantly, it's not in line with their revenue model, because the Mozilla Foundation, their revenue model was all based on this sort of rinse they were extracting from the search engines, putting their search engine as the default in that stuff. They were basically relying on Google paying them, right? And go scroll down to those actual things that they were doing. We can sort of take a look at whether that lined up. A mobile app for making website. How does that line up with that revenue model? It doesn't at all.
No, especially when there's competitors in that area that already were established and already very successful. You had Microsoft Front Page, still in use today, even though it's a piece of shit. You have Weebly as a website builder, which has been established for a very long time, has plugins for things like cPanel and all the various shared hosting things that are well-known, well-used, that sort of thing. So, like, website builder, are you really?
Are you being serious?
Yeah, are you being serious?
There's literally a dime a dozen. Like a federated identity system. Nobody cares.
Well, and this sounds real familiar. Could it possibly be that something called OpenID exists for this?
Yeah, exactly. There's no way to monetize this because it's already done and it's free. It's the same with like a large file transfer service. Isn't there a big fat guy who hacked German banks that did that?
Well, yes, some sort of upload that was megalithic in size, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly.
Or perhaps, if you don't want to go for criminals, perhaps talk about a large service that named itself after mythical women that were very tall, and their bucket service for uploading large files.
Yeah, and then a password manager. There's 4 or 5 that are good. Why do we need another?
There's even 4 or 5 that are bad that were better than Mozilla's.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's like an Internet of Things framework and standard. That is not necessary at all.
Well, and more importantly, let's be real, for IoT, a framework on an embedded device, are you kidding me?
Well, and the other part of this is how is this even remotely in their core competency?
No,
That's not web of any kind, really. I mean,
no, that's not the modern web or the semantic web or any of the
that's
web
like
things that you
web
hear. No,
0.5.
that's Internet of shit.
Yes, exactly. An email relay service. They're not even maintaining Thunderbird.
Yet they were trying to make an alternative to Exum or Postfix. Are you out of your GD mind?
Yeah. So a new phone operating system. SIP is fine. It works.
Well, and more importantly, they were looking for a alternative to Android. They were looking
so
to
like
give them
Mozilla
that. Yeah, it was the Firefox OS
versus Chrome OS. Who cares?
No.
There are plenty of systems out there like React for building native applications that are better than that now.
Yeah.
You don't need that, and
more importantly, the way that
how would you monetize that?
Yeah, you don't.
You don't.
Well, without doing what Google or Apple did, which is something that Mozilla, frankly, is not willing to do.
No, you'd have to make a phone.
Well, you'd not only have to make a phone, but you would have to make an app store and an app economy that's chained to it, just like Android or Apple did.
Yeah, so that you can achieve seniorage, essentially.
Yep.
And they're not willing to do that sort of thing.
Well, and more importantly, established players already existed there. There's great competition already in the market. Why are you entering?
And of course, they had to build AI. Oh my God. That is when you know it was a scam. Okay? That whoever was in charge of this project was a complete charlatan. All right?
Yeah.
Because any large established software firm, whenever you hear the word AI, and they already have existing business models, and they have paying customers, that's when I get out my slapping hand, right?
Oh yeah, that's when you know you're getting sold a load of malarkey, because AI is a very hard problem. If you have another business model that is already existing, already profitable, or already your main mission,
it's going to be better for you to improve on that, better ROI every single time.
Yeah, okay? Because AI is such a hard problem that it's one of those things where we were talking the other day about old versus new programmers. It's going to be one of those things where a new programmer, a new perspective on some sort of things, all the things that are the current obstacles to AI, which are huge freaking hurdles, which old heads have been talking about for a long time.
To the point of this is like a fusion problem level of difficulty.
No, this is like those old Xenosaga memes where you've got the big dog that's like too deep for you. Because it's like layers upon layers of like Inception level kind of complexity.
What I'm just saying is AI is the same kind of vaporware as Fusion.
Oh, yes.
Or those other things that is just 5 years away, man.
Well, it's 5 years away. Yeah. But the point is, it's future tech, man. It's not actually something that's real until it happens. Until someone really cracks the nut.
And so, like, do you think that Mozilla, a not-for-profit web browser company, is going
to be the one to crack that nut?
Hell to the no. No way. No.
And more importantly, even if they were the one to do it, what would have been the odds to have done it?
0.
The odds are very low. It's less than 1%. I can tell you that right now.
There's a lot of better AI firms out there.
Well, and even them are not going to succeed.
If you want to talk about it, it's like, the people who at the turn of the century were best equipped to actually get AI. That's like Wolfram. And they failed.
Yeah. All the ones that had the best chances all failed. The ones that were most interested in it. Kurzweil AI. They haven't made an AI. The singularity ain't here.
No, and it's not happening anytime soon. And so then we get down to the worst of it, which is Pocket. Okay, $25 million for an RSS reader. When the fact is, most of these garbage CMSs out here don't even have RSS anymore. People are not even using CMSs anymore, for Christ's sake, because they're so bad. WordPress is such awful garbage that people are using Substack and Medium, which are even worse.
They're even worse cancer. They're using Twitter. They're using Facebook. They're using whatever, walled garden social, whatever the hell that, accepts your login from some other federated ID service like OpenID or Facebook or any of these other people that support OAuth 2.0. They're using these other walled gardens. They're not using their own distributed, hey, I got me a website because nobody decides, I'm like an old head.
Yeah, nobody decides to build their OPML feed list anymore and be informed relatively cheaply. No, what they're going to do is they're going to subscribe to different people who then give them the ego investments and the dopamine hits and the serotonin that they need to be entertained by short TikTok videos that any thinking person would realize this is the most inane thing that has ever been made in history.
Now we're getting a little too close to saying just get off my lawn, but the point is, Pocket was kind of chasing the wrong thing when that 25
That's not
million,
the trend that is the market is going towards.
Just think about what $25 million could have done regarding maintaining the MDN in the current year with all the coronavirus, whatever nonsense is going on. Just think about how much that money could have gone to maintaining that instead of cutting it.
Or they could have implemented PGP&S MIME in Thunderbird,
10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of chasing all these other silly things that they were chasing, right?
Yeah, and so they just literally threw money down a hole for no good reason because, it was playing house. It was their way of seeming important and generating news. And
we were doing things that were new and important and socially important to our supposed user base, which was rapidly dwindling for I don't know what reason.
Yeah. And most importantly, justify those nice raises for the executives
because we're making these new initiatives that are new and flashy, so we need to get paid more because we had the vision to see that we have a way out. .org.
And so that's sort of the principal agent problem run amok, which we've talked about before on some of these casts. And I'm not sure really whether or not not-for-profits are actually worse in this regard than modern corporations, in that they at least have the profit motive sort of restraining their basest impulses to play house.
Well, more importantly, especially with a publicly traded company, they have shareholders who are quite interested in them continuing to make profits.
Yeah, certainly. It's one of
especially if they issue dividends.
Yeah, and when you look at the way that Mozilla changed over the last 10, 15 years, where almost all of the employees that were there in the founding days, they're all now way long gone.
Way the hell burned out whenever they were trying to make Thunderbird in the first place, only it was a mail client as part of Netscape.
Yeah, and they are just not really... whatever ideological consistency they had as an organization is long gone. Oh, yeah. And that's the only thing that keeps a not-for-profit from turning into... pretty much the stereotype.
With your money, we can save a child for 2 cents a day.
Yeah.
We can save the web for 2 cents a day.
Yeah, and the fact is, it's like 98% of the money goes towards administrative costs, right?
Well, and right, even the person in the article was saying probably a more successful strategy for them would have been to just directly ask the users, as if it was save the children.
Yeah. But which also brings us to sort of what actually ended up happening with Brendan Eich and a lot of these Mozilla guys that realized that the company, the nonprofit anyways, had changed a lot for the worse. Brave is the fastest growing browser on the web. It's not really huge, but it's
taken up a lot of the browser share that Mozilla lost.
Yeah, it's certainly been the one that's been grabbing the most share from Mozilla, and it's just because it's sort of what Mozilla used to be, with regard to...
Ultimately, it's a fork of Chromium, yes, but it's chasing many of the things that were important to Mozillans, that used Netscape, that used the browser in the past. They're concerned about privacy. They're concerned about
open source
and standards. Yeah. They're concerned about these things, and, Brave actually, tries to at least they at least have the right messaging regarding this.
They're at least job owning it. Who knows whether they're actually delivering on any of it. But
yeah, and I mean,
especially when you see there's crypto involved, you have to.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, a lot of it's about messaging that also failed with Firefox. They did not continue the age-old messaging of we're, continuing to be Mr. Open source web. We're only devoted on Firefox, mainly because they kept chasing these other projects. And everybody that is into open source and all this sort of stuff, you're talking about some pretty high tier smarties up here. They can tell if you're chasing this other thing and not the browser. Whenever you haven't fixed the bug that they've filed on it that's been outstanding for say 5 years, you're way past the point of saying don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining.
Oh yeah, and Mozilla not fixing bugs for 20 years and Thunderbird, well, what more do you need to know, right? So that sort of brings us back to sort of our whole meta narrative here about ego investment and things like that. This is a clear case where the ego investments of the Mozilla Foundation had literally nothing to do whatsoever with their users
or their core mission or even their revenue model.
Yeah, none of that lined up whatsoever, and they essentially just descended into complete madness, and the company's basically collapsing as a result of that. And it's sad to see that people just got invested in things that don't matter at all, that don't benefit them at all. When the fact is, had they not had any ego at all and literally been like grunting primitives driven by their id, they would have done better, Well,
if literally it was just like, oog, me make browser faster, me make browser better than other guy,
they would have won. That's all. I mean, the fact is, when it comes to open source, the cathedral and the bazaar, for all the hate ESR gets, is still right. Okay? At the end of the day, the better software still wins. Okay? Because resources are finite and people are going to go with what works. Okay?
Yep. Whether that's closed or open source.
Yeah, they don't care. I mean, that's why Chrome is winning. That's why it's things like Slack are winning in the messaging, because it's like, you know what? The open source solutions, they're not fast and they don't work. Okay.
Well, certainly not in the way that the majority of the users want them to, or the majority of the admins who are trying to administrate this want them to. There's either too much overhead, or the users have too much overhead interacting with the chat service. The workflow is not right. And, that's like, whenever you talk about XMPP, why did it fail? That sort of thing. Yes, it's because it was too much of a pain in the ass, both for the sysadmin and for the user, compared to, say, something like Slack.
XML projects fail?
No,
never.
No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, but it's
just like RSS, right?
Yeah,
that never failed.
Yeah. I need more C data. I need a lot more C data. Okay, but anyways, so hopefully that gives you an idea, sort of a practical application of some of the things we've been talking about, and how it all goes wrong and how you can avoid it. Certainly with Mozilla, it would have been straightforward to avoid had they just discarded their sort of ego investments in we're this type of not-for-profit, and we're all about being good, rather than like serving our users. Because whether you're not-for-profit or not, you're still serving the people who are giving you money.
Well, and the funny part is they could have still paid themselves 400% more, and nobody would have given a shit if all they did was actually execute on those core two things.
Because
nobody would have given a shit, because you would have had a great browser that's better than Chrome,
and they would have been fighting for
web
users.
Standards would be where you didn't have DRM and all this other horse shit.
Yeah. Things would have been to where
users would be happy.
Yeah, the users would have remained loyal, and
they would have been like,
still be the
give that man a raise.
Yeah, they could have been as corrupt and stupid as they wanted to, as long as they continued to deliver on their core value. And in fact, I've seen plenty of companies out there that are in fact totally mendacious, but they still deliver on their core values, and their customers still love them.
Yeah, like, so long as you actually don't lose sight of that, you pretty much are good to go, man. You can make a whole shitload of mistakes, and you're still better than 90% of the other dumbass corporations out there, because most people can't even muster the intellectual effort to self-reflect and realize that their ego investments are literally killing their company.
Yeah, and so it's sad to say this, but it's not actually hard to beat the people out there. It's like the good book says, the harvest is plenty, but the hands are few. If you understand these few little concepts, it's not hard for you to see the train wreck coming before it actually happens and stop it before it's too late.
Yeah, and I mean, we've had inklings of this. We suspected this sort of thing was happening way, way, way back whenever we saw Mozilla doing this sort of stuff.
I mean, a browser does not lose market share for no reason, right?
Exactly. And, whenever we saw things like Chrome for many, many years having such a better debugger, such a faster interpreter for JS, all those sorts of things, we were like, Mozilla's probably effing up here. I wonder what's going on there. And then
And you look at JWZ's article, he's like, every time I talk to people who were there at Mozilla, it was like, what the hell are you people doing?
Yeah, and if that's the case, whenever you're actually talking to people that are in the company, and you can't really figure out what's going on, then
and that's actually been a very useful thing for me whenever I'm doing like an investment into things, because people ask me all the time, hey, what do you think about investing in this like small company here that's local or something like that? And it's like, okay, well, what are you doing? What do you guys spend all your
what's
time
going
doing?
on? What do you spend your time? What do you spend your money on? What kind of capital you got? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and inevitably I like go into their shop and it's like, okay, so you guys have got maybe like $60,000 worth of like really hard assets if you did a fire sale, and your production process is a disaster, and you want how much per share? It's just how it works. Almost every firm is like this. They ego invest in their firm actually being great and awesome and stuff like that, because especially if they want to sell, you have to do that.
Yeah, you got to drink the Kool-Aid to some extent so that
you have the confidence.
That you have the confidence. You got to be congruent whenever you're presenting these sorts of things to a potential buyer, which I get that. But
even then, the savvy buyers are going to pick up on stuff like body language whenever you're my company is great, which
we're no, this is everything, man. This is everything.
Yeah. Are you really sure about that one, buddy?
Yeah. You're not giving off any sort of tells that would make me suspicious here.
Well, all right, guys. I hope that you guys are overly suspicious of our cast thanks to our body language now, and that you hit the like and subscribe button on this video, and hit our PayPal link and give us some money, and
or hit us up in the comments. Take a look at troglodyne.net, look at the socials, hit us up in DMs, send us an email, something like that. Get a consultation with us, because we can fix some of your problems. We can look at what's going on. We can go to your company. We can talk to your people. We can do the work if it's programming. All these sorts of things we can do to you. We can do for you. We've been in the trenches. We know what it's like. We've shed our ego investments. So all that baggage is gone. We will give it to you straight.
And we will be that objective, unbiased opinion that can get you on the righteous path, brother.
Exactly. Thanks. Have a good night.